This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, JM Ryerson.
What's happening, you guys? Welcome back to the Let's Go Win podcast. We're in for a treat. I was surprised this morning. We have a back-to-back Franklin Covey experts, and I was a little stopped, like, okay, how's this going to go? And I can already feel it's going to be amazing. It's going to be different, and yet they both come from that background, that solid background. So I'm so excited. Remember, this show is all about helping you be happy, healthy, wealthy. And just like the gentleman prior did, I know this young woman is going to do the same. Marché Pleshette is a highly skilled leadership coach and Franklin Covey consultant with expertise in effective communication, leadership, professional change, employee engagement, and retention, and the organizational value of human capital. She is a subject matter expert for the 7 habits of a highly effective people. I've read the book like 100 times. Of course, I mess that up. And has often over 15 years of experience in coaching and facilitating. Marché is also a certified coach through the Hudson Institute of Coaching and has a background in mass communications with a journalism focus. And with that, welcome to the show. I was so focused on saying your name correctly that I think the rest of it just got screwed up. But what an amazing job.
It's all good.
Well, yes. Well, thank you for being here and welcome.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
So, you're going right down the hole of, and when I say hole, I mean the beautiful black hole of leadership. And when I say black hole, I mean there's so much goodness in there, but I don't think it's taught nearly as effectively as maybe you or I would like to see the world have it. And I know you have this amazing background with Franklin Covey. What led you into really getting into this work, that leadership and communication and employee engagement? Because it's so needed in today's world. Marché, what led you into that space?
Yeah. So you know what? I think that all of our lives, there's this gnawing, you already know innately, we're not always clear about it, but we always have this drive towards something. And all of my life, it has always been just in me to help inspire and empower people. Is just naturally who I've always been. Prior to coming to Franklin Covey, so I'll tell you something funny before I even get into this. As we're going to be talking about change a bit. I don't know if you know this, but it is said that the average American has 5 to 7 professions in a lifetime. And so have I. So I'm probably on my 6th, but I've done public relations, public affairs, community affairs, human resources. Before coming to Franklin Covey, I was about to say, I was manager of employee retention at a major health system here in Atlanta, which is home for me. And in that work, I actually worked with leaders a lot. And I saw the frustrations of both individual contributors and leaders. And I realized it's important that we motivate ourselves, but a lot of the effectiveness in the workplace really starts with leaders. Like if we have leaders, we hear people say, people leave leaders, they don't leave jobs, right? Mm. And I really recognized in that work in employee retention that leaders had a tremendous role. And I loved working with them to try to make ours the best place to work. As a result, I also got very interested in coaching and leadership coaching, which took me to the Hudson Institute. And then on from there, got connected with Franklin Covey, finding that I could do it on a much bigger scale, help leaders to be the best that they could be. And at Franklin Covey, we're in the business of helping organizations accomplish their goals through behavior change. And it just fit. It's right, connects right with my heart and my purpose. So,
it's amazing to me. You definitely gave me something I did not know, that people have 5 to 7 different careers. And why that shocks me, Marché, I believe you because you definitely have the data, and so you've seen this. But change is not something that people typically embrace, and for somebody to make those leaping changes, why is that? Are they searching and seeking out really where home their purpose is, or do they get bored, or is it a mixture of the two? Tell me what the data is showing you.
I think it's a mixture of all of the things that you have just said. I think, first of all, oftentimes when people graduate from high school and we're trying to figure out, some people go to college, some people become entrepreneurs, some people decide to go into the military. It's various things that we do. But at that age, we don't know who we are, really, right? We have clues. I mentioned before, like there's this idea of what you like, but then I think that we're driven by societal norms. We're driven by influencers, our family, what, our friends say we should be doing. And so I think that, and by the way, I've also learned through, coaching and psychology, psychological work and research, every decade of our lives really has a different meaning, or it means something different for us. So we're ever evolving, just period. So when we talk about change, if you never desire to change, we're constantly changing, right? And so I think we do things and we realize this is not satisfying. Sometimes it's the drive for money, more money. Sometimes we accomplish, I've listened to some of your podcasts and I think about this, I have thought about this a lot. It's like sometimes we're driven by making a lot of money and we realize it's like, I'm making it, but I don't have a life, right? So it's different things that inspire or move us to go for something else and reinvent ourselves, or go for. And by the way, a lot of and I didn't say we have a whole lot more jobs in the process, but we switch careers about 5 to 7 times. But a lot of the career shifts don't require more education. Sometimes it just requires a reinventing of ourselves and thinking differently, or just kind of tapping into our purpose. And sometimes it does require skills, training, and so on, at more education. Sometimes it does, but it doesn't always. So we're ever evolving, period.
Boy, you definitely got me thinking, and this is going to be fun because, and I know that's not necessarily why we're here, but you bring up such a great point. I think of myself in my 20s to my 30s and now even my 40s, and to think of a decade, that's a long time. Like there's so much change that happens during these times. To your point is, look, I'm getting older. As people get older, they kind of accept like, okay, maybe I don't need to go out and go to the club, or, instead I want to stay home and read a book. Yeah. And they accept that change. Is it the sweeping, abrupt, like in your face change that's so hard? And I'm asking this because I know obviously that's a lot of what the book is. I mean, it's called Change. Yes. So this is such a fascinating subject to me, because I actually called my newest book upcoming Upgrade, because the word change was such a repellent to some of my clients. I was like, well, why don't we upgrade? Yeah. So is it that sweeping, abrupt change that scares people? Is it the uncertainty? What are you guys seeing? Because I think that is just absolutely fascinating. What you said, every decade, right, has a different meaning and season in our life. And I absolutely embrace that. But man, those sweeping changes, it sure seems to scare the heck out of people.
Yeah. So I love that the name of the book is really Change: How to Turn Uncertainty into Opportunity. And that uncertainty is such a huge, it could be so subtle, and yet it can be so powerful, right? And so your question is does it have to be like sweeping changes that unnerve us? Or I paraphrase your question, but is it the sweeping change, or is it just any subtle change? To be honest with you, any change can be unnerving, right? It could be, it's funny, my 84-year-old mother lives here with me, and that's a whole change in and of itself. I can tell you a little bit about that later. But we were talking, just with it being graduation season and so many kids graduating and going on to college, I went to school 1 hour away from here, from where I live. And she said she cried all the way home. And my dad was asking, like, why are you crying? Like, she can come home every single weekend if she chooses to. But it was just, just kind of relating to, we were talking about that just last week, just relating to that. It's like, my child is no longer in the house with me. That's not a jarring change, but it's a change, right? In the workplace, having a new supervisor, that's not a sweeping change, but that's going to shake some things up. That's different. Your job getting, I'll tell you, this has been about 10 years ago. We got a new employee reimbursement system. And everybody in the workplace gets a new system, whether it's a computer, new computer or a new system of doing things. We got a new employee reimbursement system. And do you know, I almost did not get paid. I put it off so much. I tried it, I didn't like it. And I put it off so long that I almost did not get reimbursed over $2,000. Because that wasn't a sweeping change. But, when I was like, oh, this is hard. And this is the silliest thing. But I was thinking, it doesn't even look nice. The other one was colorful. This one was just black and white. It felt clunky, and I just thought like, I had mastered the other one. And I had finally gotten to a point where it's like, I could knock my employee reimbursements out like the day after I do it. And now there's this new one. And I'm just thinking, I don't like it. And we commiserated, those of us who were road warriors, to like, we don't like it. This is horrible. And you just put it off, put it off, put it off. That's not a sweeping change, but it's a change that I don't know how to do this. So I'm not doing it. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And, to the point, like you were saying, it's new. I don't know how to do it. And it's habitual, right? These are habits that we have. And eventually this new system will become the norm. And if they reverted back to the old system, you'd probably be like, wait a minute, I got used to this system. I don't want the old system. It is fascinating how we get wired that way, because I think there's a level of skill and excellence that you had achieved utilizing this system. And now you got to learn this new one, even though we want to be challenged. The other system wasn't broken. It was working. It was reimbursing you. Yeah.
That's right. And really, as humans, we are, we're wired to, like, we get adjusted to patterns. And when it's disrupted, it's jarring. It can be dizzying. It can be disturbing. And let me also say to you, JM, there are people who actually like change. I'm hearing that more and more. There are people who really do get bored with the same old, and they're ready for some things to get moving. And that's good. And then there's also a downside to that too. So, in the book, we talk about the advantages and disadvantages to 5 different common reactions to change, but that ready to go is some people like that.
I can 100% attest to that. And I want to hear the 5 things that you guys found for sure. But I will say, I used to speak in front of rooms and I would always ask, who likes change? And literally maybe 10% of the room would ever raise their hand. Mm-hmm. Generationally, I will say you're starting to see, because I think our world has evolved so quickly, and we're really seeing this, that because of converging technologies, things are rapidly accelerating.
That's right.
That maybe we're becoming accustomed to it, and it's not as scary as it used to be. So what are you guys seeing with the top 5? I'm really curious on what those reactions are, because like you said, you sometimes have those early adopters and there's that whole step through. So what are you seeing with the change in those 5 things?
Yeah, sure. So there are people, I just mentioned, there are people who are ready to roll, and we say that those people move, and they're ready to go. They're tired of the, same old thing. They're ready to go. And then there are people who minimize. They don't really love that the change is happening. They're going to be compliant, and they'll do as much as is necessary, but as little as possible. They don't necessarily want the change. So there are those who minimize. And then there are those who wait. And I'll tell you, and by the way, as I'm telling you or sharing all of these with you, anybody, we all can be all of these. We can all experience all of these. And by the way, we can experience all of them in one change experience, by the way. However, wait was that was just my way of doing things, just historically, because I tend to be on the disc tool. I'm just a compliant person. So I'm gonna get with the change, but I also used to be, because I'm so much better at this, but I used to be a person who, like, I want to check it out. I want to know how this is impacting others. So people who wait are kind of observing. They're going to get with the change, but they're waiting to see how it's impacting people and things first. So, and then there's resist, and people who resist they don't want the change. And they are pretty expressive about it. Typically, sometimes they're overt, and they just let the leader know, or they let people know, I do not like this. This is not a good idea. Here's why. Sometimes they are a bit covert, and they just kind of chatter, water cooler conversation about why this isn't good, and try to get advocates, to join them in that. And then there are those who quit. And people who quit think to themselves, like, this is not what I signed up for. I don't want this. So I don't want to participate. I don't want to be a part of it. And I will also share with you, and I don't know if you have had the opportunity to read the book or not, but there's this really cool parable that we start the book with. And it's about a cargo crew riverboat that's going up the river routine. And we name all of the people who are in the boat. The labels, we kind of label them this, which in fact, for leaders, we encourage them not to label people, but in the parable, they are labeled. We call them move, minimize, wait. We have two people who are called quit and quit. And it's distinguishing. There are those who quit and they stick around, but they don't get with the change. And there are those who, in the book, the parable, quits, they jump ship. And sometimes it's okay for people to jump ship. If this isn't for them, there's still going to be change, but it's okay for them to do that. Of all of the reactions that I've just shared with you, the only one that I would say is not good is the person who stays in place, but they don't move forward. They quit in place. So there are pros and cons, there are advantages and disadvantages to all of them.
Yeah, that makes sense, because let me give at least my example. I have a rule in business where if we disagree, so let's say there's 3 of us and we have a voting system. Now, let's say I'm adamantly against whatever proposal you're doing, and 2 of the people vote for that. The rule is, once the vote has been cast, once that's been said, it doesn't matter. Now that is your belief, because what can crush people in business is if something negative happens and you go, I told you so. Your rule, it's not right. If you were to go to your HR department and say, I told you guys, you should have used the old reimbursement system. This thing sucks. It creates chaos amongst leadership teams. And it's one of the apps. I never talked about this. I'm so glad you brought this up, because it's one of those really, really principled, important cardinal rules that whenever you as a leadership team agree on something, whether you totally oppose it in the room, once you are forward facing to your team, you act as if it's your idea. You have to own it. You can't go, you know what? I told him that was a dumb idea. But I'll tell you, Marché, I see it so often where leaders are say, well, I told those guys it wasn't going to work. See, I was right. And it creates such dysfunction.
Yeah. So here's the deal. And this is honestly, the book was actually designed for leaders. And while it was designed for leaders, I have had so many people read it and say it's for leaders, but it spoke to me as we launched it and prepared to launch it. But here's the deal. It really is intended to help leaders to understand how to navigate their team members through change. So I just told you the change reactions, but there's also this predictable pattern to change that is kind of the foundation of what we're talking about. Because when we understand the reaction and the change pattern, and it's a very simple pattern, but when we understand that as leaders, we can talk about it, we can understand where people are, and we can understand how we navigate them through it. But to your point, the first thing is, as leaders, we've got to understand what is the change ourselves. So we'll bring this into the workplace, which is when we talk about leaders. Okay, so in the workplace, by the time change has been introduced and a leader is saying, okay, I got to give it to my team members because the executives are saying this is where we're going. They've already done the analytics on it. They've already done the strategy on it. It's probably been talked about for a whole year. Let's just say a change initiative at an organization. By the time it gets to the people, it's like oftentimes we're just saying like, so this is what we're going to do. Let's do it. Well, it never works that way. We can't just give change to someone and expect them to do it. It's a whole people process that goes with that. And so for starters, as a leader, we don't always like what changes are, the ones that we are asked to employ or implement through our people. We don't always like it, but we've got to do the very same thing that we're asking or that we are sharing with our leaders to do with their team members. So get clarity on what's changing, why is it changing, what does this mean for me? We used to do this, now we're supposed to do that. We want to talk to our leaders. We've got to understand and we've got to own it. We must own it. So you're right about that. And as leaders, we're dealing with people. Change cannot happen without people, right? So we can't just think that this is a process, so just do this. We've actually got to deal with the people part of it. So honestly, what this book is all about and what the whole change mastery is all about, it's about relationships, it's about communication, understanding how do we do this and how do we support people and understand that it is a very emotional process that people are going through. And as leaders, we are in the business of relationships. So if you don't want to be relatable to people, then maybe it's not a good idea. And historically, I think I think that we've been able to manage processes, but it is said that we really manage processes, but we lead people. We've been able to manage processes and the people and kind of forget that it's people. I just kind of put it all together in that little statement. But in truth, it really is about leading people. So that's the focus. And it's there's a whole lot more that I can share with you about how exactly that happens. But there's something that I always say, it's the people stuff. And we used to think it's the soft skills. And we used to think that they were simply soft skills and that was kind of blown off. But we know the hard stuff. It's the soft skills that we need help with. And soft skills aren't so soft. They're really power skills, right? So that's what's distinguishing.
No, that's extremely well put. And the soft skills, wherever that came along, that terminology does need to change because these are human skills, right?
That's right.
And what you were really talking about, gosh, I'm telling you, I mean, again, I coach on this stuff, but as you're talking, to really put yourself in someone else's shoes and say, I've been working on this, I've been aware of this potential change for a year, and it's just now being presented to you. You have all of the emotions that have come with it, right? Because just like there's a process in grief, and you talked about that process of change, what does that look like when somebody's going through change? So there's probably Okay, surprise, and then there's
Yeah.
anger, and then there's sadness, and there's elation, and then I'm sure there's a bevy of emotions that happen. Is there really a process of what people go through as
Yes.
they interpret it?
Yes, there is absolutely a process. So you just talked about the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross process of grief, because people really do go through grief. I want to tell you something, and then I will share the predictable pattern of change the framework that we reference in this book. When there's a book that's called Change, what is it? Change or Die, and it's by Alan Deutschman. And he talks about research was done that found that when people were asked who were going through the active process of change, do you think the change will make things better or worse for you? 72% of people said that they thought that it would make things worse for the organization, change, right? When they asked, do you think it will make things better or worse for you personally? 88% of people said they thought that it would make things worse for them. So while we said that there are people who are ready, for change, people who want to move, and there are pros and cons to all of the reactions, largely people really are concerned about change because we like knowing what's happening, right? So here's what's so beautiful about the change framework. It's a framework that helps us to know what to expect, right? So that in and of itself should calm us just a little bit. So here's the framework. There's the zone of status quo, where things are like, it's business as usual. We are masters of what we're doing. We know exactly how it works. We can do things with our eyes closed. And change is coming. Is the one thing that we all know. So one, it's probably going to be helpful just to be vigilant, just to, kind of scan what's happening, in our industry, what's happening in our professions, what's happening societally, what's happening in the world that could impact our company, our business, our lives personally. So in the zone of status quo, everything feels good, but it's helpful to understand that change is coming, and I call it vigilant relaxation. That's something that I made up. It's like, you don't have to be overly, but just kind of relax, but just kind of be on the lookout. Then when change happens, it's what we call the zone of disruption. And if you can imagine a waterfall, it's like a dip. And by the way, it doesn't matter if it's an awesome change that's happening. I often say to people, if you were to win an electric car and you never had that before, it's still going to be the zone of disruption. There's still going to be a dip in results, a dip in speed, a dip in how easily things go, right? And so in the zone of disruption, particularly in the workplace, it slows things down. Even what you knew how to do and all of the other things are going a little bit slower. You're not quite getting the results because something has changed. They're telling you, we got to do this different. There's a new CEO. This is a new system. It's going to be an acquisition, whatever it happens to be. So people want to know what's happening. What does this mean? You just snatched the rug from beneath me. And until we can get enough clarity and know what's happening, people will not participate in the change. It doesn't matter what it is. So we got to get information. And then that gets us to what we call the point of decision, which is really important. Because until we get to the point of decision, and we never get there until we get enough information, until we get to the point of decision, we're not participating. We're not really trying. It's like we're spinning our wheels, where time is being wasted. A lot is happening. So we got to get as much clarity as we can to reach the point of decision. When we reach the point of decision, it takes us to this thoroughfare. And remember, I just showed you a dip. It actually, we start to kind of move up just a little bit because we're saying, okay, I'm going to try. I don't know how this change is going to work. I don't know how I play a part in this. I'm not sure, but I'm going to try. So there is a little bit of momentum and there's a little bit of effort. And that takes us to the zone of adoption. And the zone of adoption is where we're saying, okay, I'm going to try to see what works. And it'd be nice if it were just a smooth, like, okay, we're on the way up, but it's not that easy. It's what we call the spaghetti bowl, right? It's like a squiggly line because people try, they take one step forward, two steps back. It's like, that didn't work. I'll go back to the employee reimbursement system. I really did try, but I made a mistake. And it was really hard to correct the mistake. The old one, you make a mistake, is then you just go back and delete. This one, it was just harder. And so I put it to the side for another month, right? So people try things, but also in that it's so important for us to be perseverant. And I say perseverant really in a very human way. Seriously, what do we need to do? It's like, we got to talk to people. We've got to see, who is this working for? What have you done that didn't work that I can avoid? I gotta breathe. I need to meditate because this is hard. I want to quit. And by the way, McKinsey research actually shows that 25%, only 25% of most change initiatives actually are successful and reach their goal. Only 25%. Most change actually fails in the zone of adoption, not the zone of disruption, but when people are saying, I'm going to try, right? And so in the zone of adoption, people are trying, and it's a whole lot, that leaders, by the way, I've kind of not spoken to the leadership part, but leaders need to be talking to people all the while. We got to engage people. They're trying to persevere, but we got to talk to them and ask, what do you think what have you tried that a portion of it worked? Maybe it's that we have forums where people can talk to each other, or we match people with others, or we find out, like, what's the hardest thing, right? And support them in that, and give people the opportunity to make mistakes because they're actually trying. And if we could get them engaged enough, actively engaged, not passively, and that means that as leaders, we got to be in it with them as well. We've got to be communicative with them. If we could have good conversations, really value what they're experiencing, it gets us to a point where, okay, we made it through, and we're not we know how to do this. And that gets us to that phase, which is the last phase of the framework, as we explain it, which is called the zone of innovation. And then the zone of innovation, it's where you help people realize, and when we go through change, we must realize, you know what, things really are better than what we thought before. And we can't take that for granted. And JM, I love that you said for the book that you're doing, you called it Leveling Up. Is that the name of it that you said?
Upgrade.
Upgrade. So I often reference this as leveling up because we don't want to go back to status quo. We want to level up. We want to upgrade. And we want people to, when we go through change, we want to look around and think about what's better? What's an opportunity that I could never have had before this? And just think about COVID. Like, a lot of organizations honestly thought, we can't allow everybody to work from home. We can't, but now schools are realizing, while it's helpful to have students in front, right, face to face, schools are realizing they could support and tutor and help students remotely in ways that they had not been doing before. Organizations are realizing that they have talent that's all over the world, and it's diverse talent. Whereas I've talked to people in the past who kind of thought, like, oh, we're not as diverse as we could be because where we are, it's very limited. It's all kinds of opportunities that we didn't think about. And even I had someone recently in a session say, a breakup. And so in the book, we're talking about, work things, and we talk about some personal experiences as well. But I had someone say, a breakup, I can actually take my breakup right through that, the framework, because in zone of innovation, had I stayed in that relationship, I would never have met this person that I'm with now, or had the opportunity to be in a better headspace than I'm in now. So it's just a universal thing that is, helpful for anybody. And we don't have to be psychology, we don't have to be PhDs in psychology to be able to do this or to master change.
Yeah, no, it's so beautifully done. And if you guys were, as you're listening to her going through that, it, this is 100% why I called the book Upgrade, because people love to upgrade. It's
Right.
the same thing. It is literally the same thing. But the end result is you're saying, oh, it's an upgrade, it's good, versus change has this negative connotation so frequently. I love the other part that you said. I mean, all of it was wonderful, but the persistence, and I use the word grit often,
Mhm.
that in order for greatness to be achieved, you go through 3 levels of G's. You start with the growth mindset. I have to have this growth mindset that this is going to get better. We are going to better ourselves. That's the idea. Then I'm going to go through the stuff that sucks, right? And that's the part where you need the grit to say, look, I'm going to see it through. And then you start to see and have gratitude for how amazing this upgrade really is. That's my simplistic
I love that.
description, but it's really the same framework. And I really loved when you said, look, it's the zone of adoption where it gets screwed up, because that's when people are like, well, it didn't work, let's go right back.
That's right.
And that's where the Netflix of the world decided that, hey, we're not going to compete with Blockbuster anymore here. We're going to get adoption. And look how they continue to evolve.
That's
And
right.
the companies that grab a hold of this change and embrace it and say, look, I don't have to like it. It's just inevitability that the world is changing. And if we don't, we will become a dinosaur.
That's
That's
right.
just the facts, guys. There's
That's
just
the
no arguing
truth.
that.
That's the truth. I often say change is growth and growth is change, for the very
Mm,
reason that you've just said. It's like if you stay stagnant, it's like you can't be competitive. You cannot, you're not, we'll get left behind. So we gotta get good. And this is not just a leadership competency, it's a human competency, right? It's like change is growth and growth is change. If you're growing, you gotta change. You can't both grow and stay the same. It's not possible.
yeah. And you know that, again, you put things in a way that's so, it makes it feel better. I always say, get uncomfortable. And you're growing during uncomfortable times. So get uncomfortable during uncomfortable times, get comfortable being uncomfortable. And what
Right.
you said is even better. It's like growth is change, change is growth. Like it makes total sense. You're either growing or you're decaying. There is
That's
no,
right.
like, you
That's right.
can't just stay here, guys. It just
That's
doesn't work.
right. That's right.
I'm looking at all the various questions, and I have a bunch. I want to give you an opportunity, whatever I didn't know enough to ask, because I literally, if you were to look at this, you would try and decipher what the hell, because
Yeah,
I have so much. You've got my brain going, which I always know makes a great episode.
I love
What
it.
what didn't I know enough to ask you, Marché, where you're like, we need to make sure that everyone knows this? What's on your heart, on your mind, that you want to make sure to express to the audience before we start to wrap
Yeah.
up?
Thank you so much for asking that. I think that we've had a great conversation, and I would say, I think for so long, and I touched on this just a moment ago, but I do feel extremely passionate about this. I think for so long, leaders have done a good job, right, of leading processes, and making sure that things are done. But I think that there is this people part of leadership that we cannot miss. And I've said it before, but I think that it is worth reiterating. If you are a leader, you are in the business of relationships. And it's not always easy for us. There are some leaders, I'm a very talkative person. I love people, and I may seem like an extrovert, but in fact, I have to motivate myself to really like speak up and validate the things that I'm thinking and not wait till later. I need to renew myself, but I'm able to process that because I know it is so important to convey and communicate, not just convey. I think there's a difference in the two. And that's one thing even about change. So as leaders, when people are going through change and when we're leading, it is all about people. You cannot get your initiatives, you cannot get your goals accomplished outside of people, and people there is a passive aggressive response when people feel like they are not important. And one of the greatest ways that we can show them that we really do care about them and we value them and can only be successful with them is by communicating, listening, giving them eye contact, working through our own challenges of, just asking like, what is hard about this? This was not easy for me either. And I believe that we can do it. Getting what's the one thing that works for you or that aligns with something that matters to you that we're doing. Maybe it's not the whole thing, but what's one thing? What's one suggestion that you might have? Like, get them engaged, get them involved, show them that we value them. That's the one message that I would leave everybody with. We cannot do leadership without doing relationships. And that's what change is all about.
Oh man, you're a wordsmith. You have a way with words, and it's so true. Yeah, the part that you just talked about, like I'm an extrovert, or at least from the outside, that's the way it comes in. But I need to get myself going, and I think people get that. You really don't understand that, right? Where some people can be extremely extrovert, I'm using air quotes, on stage, but the truth is they're an introvert that fills their bucket backstage. But the reason they do that is because they're giving everything to the people that they serve. And that is such a powerful leader. I love that.
Yeah. So you know what? Here's the last thing. The book is like a coach in a book. So if you find it hard and you're trying to figure out, like, how do I navigate and help people get through the process of change? There are captain's corners, is the parable, it's tools, all kinds of things to help you do that. So that's what's so good about the book, helping us to do that very thing.
I love that. If people wanted to come find the book, I have not read it. It's sitting over here. I know, I told you, I got it. I literally flew out of the country. I'm excited now because, and it's so cool too. This was such a different interview from two similar backgrounds of Franklin Covey and two wildly different interviews. And I'm so excited for both of them. But if people want to go find the book, understand all the work that you guys are doing, what's the best place to reach you online?
Sure. So you can reach me online. LinkedIn is a perfect place. It is Marché Pleshette. And of course, that's on LinkedIn. You can also find me on Instagram under Marché Pleshette. And the book can be purchased through on Amazon and any of the book purchase outlets. And it's also on Audible as well. Change, how to turn uncertainty into opportunity.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut that off. Absolutely, you guys, please go check it out. Franklin Covey has such an amazing name, but the collaboration of so many brilliant minds on this subject, I think that's what you're going to love. And I like the way that people are starting to do this more now, where it's not just one author's mind, but rather it's a collaboration. What a beautiful idea. Marché, you're awesome. Thank you for coming on and sharing your experience, your wisdom, and making it so simplistic, because you take these complex, ideas and you make them really simple. And I appreciate that so much.
Thank you so much. It's been fun being with you. Thank you.
Well, you guys, look, you're going to go through change. Like, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. And now you can look and know, okay, this is what the process of a change looks like. It's zone to the point of decision. Here's the zone. There's 5 steps. And now you can understand it and you can go, oh, maybe that's why my teenager didn't follow through on what I said. They didn't know or understand the process of change. So share this with anyone that is going through change. So that's everyone. Get it out there. We need people to read this book. It's so helpful to leaders, and all of you are leaders. Until next time, remember, your mindset matters. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, JM Ryerson.